Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Legends. Coffee with Legends is a special series where I invite the legends. And when I say the legends, I literally mean the legends. Now, what do I mean by legends? Legend for me is not someone who is a C level executive, someone who is a multi million dollar person. No, for me, that is not the definition of legend. For me, legend is someone who has impacted thousands and thousands of lives in a positive direction. Somebody who has started their beginnings with a humble surroundings, humble beginnings. Like that's how, for me, I define a legend is. In this series, Coffee with Legends, I have invited my first guest is the CEO of PMI, Mr. Pierre Le Manh. Let me invite him.
Hello, Varun. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Pierre. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm actually just back from China last night. Little
Wow,
jet lag.
nice. I actually saw your post on LinkedIn that you are back, and thank you so much for doing this.
Pleasure, of
Good.
course.
Great. Pierre, I before you even started, I just gave a little bit of introduction about you, and I said your full name. I just wanted to make sure did I pronounce it correctly? Pierre Le Manh. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's the French pronunciation of it. There's the Vietnamese one and the American one, but you did it well. I was born in France, so it's the right pronunciation for me.
Amazing, amazing. The reason, Pierre, why did I even say this? I remember I was, I recorded a video almost like 10 years back, and I was teaching this concept of laissez-faire. And I didn't pronounce it properly in the video, and somebody commented on that YouTube for me that somebody from France, and this is what they said that Varun, this is not how it is pronounced. So I just wanted to make sure it is on the right track.
Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. So, Pierre, you are my first guest. And I'll
Okay.
tell you honestly, for me, it is an honor that you accepted my invitation. And let me tell you one thing, if you wouldn't have been my first guest, I wouldn't have even started doing this. And the whole reason why I'm saying this is because you are someone who has impacted thousands and thousands of people. And most importantly, at a personal level, for me, you are a source of inspiration. And I always say this to my team
Thank
that
you.
if I want to be a leader, I want to be, somebody like Pierre. So that's the whole reason. And thank you so much for even accepting my invitation to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Okay. Um, Pierre, this entire video series, this entire set of questions which I will be asking you, that is about you as a person. A lot of people, they ask me that they see one side of people, but I want you to go back to the, how you started. So it's more about you, not, not in reality about PMI. It's more about you. So, my first question to you, Pierre, is that I want you to tell me more about your first job. Like, what were some of the most valuable life lessons you actually got from that particular first job you did?
Technically, my first job, like I said, I grew up in France, and
Mhm.
at the time we had to do our military service for it was at least a year, depending on what you were doing. So I was, I thought living in a barracks for like 1 year would be boring. So I actually applied to work for a very specific type of service. I worked for the French government in economic intelligence abroad. So
Wow.
I was stationed in Canada, in Montreal, for a year and a half. Um, Frankly, what it taught me is that I was not the right guy for working for the the administration. I was not the right person for being a civil servant. I found it too slow, too bureaucratic for me, at least at that age. I wanted to do something more fun. So I came back to France and I actually studied at what is now Accenture. And it turned out that I actually did very well in that role. I was progressing very well. But I also felt, this is like an organization that is too big for me at this point. I need to do something more where I would have more freedom, right? So I got my third job. I became a CFO of a company managing copyrights for actors and singers, and that was a very fun environment with as you can imagine, the opposite of Accenture in many ways, right? So I love that, but I actually felt that maybe that was too much and I needed to find something in between. So I took my first job, and that was a publishing company of which I was appointed the CEO pretty quickly. And that's the first company where I actually felt, okay, that's what I want to do, right? So I had my first CEO job. It was a company that was very traditional in many ways, that needed to be modernized, a great brand, very famous brand, but they needed to be digitized. And so I spent 4 years transforming that company entirely with the team, making it a almost fully digital company from a completely paper-based company. So that was my first experience. I learned a ton doing that. And in particular, I would tell you, I learned, um, people tell you all the time, you learn so much from your failures. It is true to an extent, but I think you also learn a lot from your successes, because it gives you a lot of self-confidence about what you can accomplish. It shows you that even stuff that feel almost impossible are actually possible with a lot of energy, some creativity, a lot of common sense and trust, and if you build the right team. So that's what I learned in that first real, was not my first job, but my first CEO job.
Wow, great, great, great. I would say like you started with the French government based out of Canada, and then finally in the CEO job. Amazing, Pierre. Thank you so much. Now, Pierre, since you talked about that you have a Vietnamese father and a French mother. Now, these are two totally different cultures, right? How do you embrace those cultural values into who you are today?
When you're a child, you know all these kids who speak two different languages, one with their mother, one with their father, and they don't even realize. So for me, although I spoke French with both my parents, but I had my own ways of communicating with my dad and my ways to communicate with my mom, and they were together. Sometimes I felt like they did not understand each other very well. Indeed, because cultures are very different, and my dad has his own way of thinking, which is very Asian. My mom very French, and so you develop this ability to, in fact, make people to communicate together. So I was almost translating, not from a language standpoint that much, but in terms of meanings and culture. I was trying to explain my mom what my dad actually meant, and my dad what my mom actually meant. And even to this day, sometimes I felt like they pretended they did not understand each other. It's so obvious to me, right? But in fact, they did not. It worked. They're still together. They're 90 and 87 years
Wow,
old,
wow.
still married together. So you don't, which proves that you don't always have to understand each other that that well to get along. At least they probably had their own language that they still have, that they understand, by which they understand each other, but not everything for sure. But for me, it was I didn't realize that at the time, but it helped me become very adaptable. Then later I started to work in multicultural environments. I worked for a U.S. company. My family, of course, on the Vietnamese side is spread out across the globe, like most Vietnamese families. I have family in Australia, family in Vietnam, family in Europe, in France in particular, family in the U.S., a lot of family in the U.S. So for me, that was, I think, a great asset to learn working into. Actually, both of those cultures are quite high context. If you remember the high context, low context, both French and Vietnamese cultures are high context, but they're very different, right? So when you grow up in an environment like that, it gives you a lot of ability to adapt, adjust, not just be culturally sensitive, but also deal with ambiguity and deal in an environment where people do not always understand each other. And your role is to make people, in the end, to unify people or make them communicate better.
Right. Pierre, you started with this life lesson of helping your mom and dad to communicate to each other. And now, it's so many people all across the world and guiding. It's such a
Doing my best. Yes.
great, great. And you are doing great. Trust me on that. Ask me, the person on the ground.
Right.
Good. Now, Pierre, just picking back to the same question, the answer you said you have an extended family, you have people all across the world, and you may call me as a stalker, or you can probably call my team as a stalker because the next question is more about that. I know
Okay.
you have 51 extended cousins, and all across the world. So, do you mind sharing a family tradition where everyone would be together? How did it go?
So it's, yeah, I have 51 first cousins actually on my dad's side. My grandpa was a very productive man. He had a, so 6 kids with my grandma and 8 with his second wife.
Mm-hmm.
And so that produced 51 first cousins. I, look, we never actually met together at the same time in the same place. So that's,
Okay.
it's, we never been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We sometimes, we know each other, not all of us, but most of us know many of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's when we travel. So when I started to travel, it was actually the first time I traveled outside of Europe was in 1980. I went to visit one of my uncle
Mm-hmm.
and my aunt and my cousins there. It was in the U.S. in New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my first experience living outside of, in a different family, frankly, a Vietnamese family who had immigrated to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a combination of that time, so not French and Vietnamese culture, but American and Vietnamese cultures, and that was a serious experience, trust me. So, even I remember going 1 week on vacation with them to some church camp.
Mm-hmm.
For a French person going to a church camp, that's weird. And so, but it was not like we're not going to church. It was just organized by the church. So this concept of community, a very strong community at
Mm-hmm.
the time around a church, was completely foreign to me. And that was a great learning. And of course, now I live in the U.S. I'm also a U.S. citizen. It's helped me years later to adjust to another different culture. So now, we know each other. Some of us, I
Mm-hmm.
had some of my cousins coming over to the U.S. not so long ago, staying at home.
Mm-hmm.
Other ones using my apartment in Paris next week. And whenever I go to Vietnam, I'm meeting with them. I'm actually going next week to Hanoi. We have a deal that I'm going to go sign there.
Nice,
I'll
nice.
probably, yeah, probably, I don't have a lot of time, but I'll probably go out, have a coffee or dinner with a few cousins. Maybe I go visit one of my aunts in Hanoi. I don't know yet, but that's how it works. We don't overcomplicate. We don't just, let each other know when we travel, and if we can, we visit each other. There's an annual meeting in France every year,
Mm-hmm.
the Vietnamese family in France. So we
Mm-hmm.
call it Vietnamese family in France, actually, literally. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever I can, I go. One of my son lives in Paris, so for him it's easy to go. I have
Mm-hmm.
another one who lives in London, so once in a while he goes. I don't know if I'm gonna go this year. I don't think I would have the time, but that's what we do. Not overcomplicated.
Like, keep it simple. And I hope you get a chance to go this time also. Good. Um, Pierre, the next question, which I'm about to ask you, you'll probably hate me for this because I hope your inbox gets flooded by questions specifically from people from France, because I know this side about you, that you have been helping a lot of French entrepreneurs to set up a business in US. Now, it's a very specific thing which you are doing, and I was literally very curious that what exactly was the motivation or the reason behind why you're even doing this.
I like helping people. So whenever people ask me for help, advice, I try to give them time. Not just French people. It can be anyone. So, former colleagues, people who used to work on my team. Sometimes they have career questions. So once in a while, I receive a text of someone who needs some advice, and if I can help, I do it. I feel humble. I don't always know if I have the right advice to give, but if people ask me, I would share my own perspective on things, and it turns out that sometimes, indeed, I'm a something called a French trade advisor,
Hmm.
right? So I'm actually officially appointed by the French government to help French businesses in the U.S. And it's not
Okay.
just me, right? We have hundreds of people like this across the globe.
Hmm.
And so because of that, some French entrepreneurs who want to expand their business to the U.S. and sometimes they move to the U.S. with the hope of raising more money,
Hmm.
getting a higher valuation. Sometimes at one point go public in the U.S. Some of them reach out, right? And if I can, I help them. I definitely spend some time with them, go have lunch or a coffee, or even have a virtual meeting like this and provide a perspective. And sometimes these people come back to me after 6 months, 1 year, and they want to discuss again. And I'm always available. I try to make myself available to people, but it doesn't have to be French people.
No, great. I definitely know the answer to this because I'm one of the recipient of that, that mentoring lesson which I got from you. And
Yeah, I mean, we can share that. One day you call me, you were,
yep,
asking yourself questions about your own business, and I don't know if it was helpful or not, but I was
it,
happy to
it
help.
was, it was, Pierre. I think I was actually quite down, and I really wanted someone who is done and dusted this, and you guided me on that direction, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you for doing that. So yes.
Most of the time, the real need that entrepreneurs have is not so much about their business because they know their business, right? So occasionally, I can provide some perspective on, let's say, the US market, for instance, for people who are not used to the US market.
Mhm,
But most of my advice will be around how to think about the US market, the
mhm,
kind of ambition you need to have, how you build a proper narrative, that kind of stuff. But most of the time, entrepreneurs feel a little, first of all, that's a characteristic with entrepreneurs. They usually are sponges, like they love getting the views of many people.
mhm,
That's a very common pattern with entrepreneurs, which is
mhm.
great. They are very curious people, very humble in a way, right? They want to know what others have lived before. They want to take a lot of advice, and then they make up their own mind, right?
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
but sometimes they also go through these phases where they feel a little not really depressed, but down or lonely a little bit, and they're not sure which path to go, and they're not sure if they really want to do what they're doing long term. It's like people who create at one point, when they get to that point where they have to manage, and sometimes they got shareholders because they raise money and it's a very big change, and they're not sure why their shareholders don't understand them. They need to be organized, do project management, do things like that. And it's
Right.
sometimes hard, more I would say, from a psychological standpoint. So what I try to do is to basically uh, help them step back a little bit and realize that life is a marathon, right? Not a sprint. And sometimes you worry too much, right? And like I always say, things are never as good as you want them to be, but they're never as bad as you believe.
Correct, correct. And on top of that, Pierre, I remember our conversation which we did, probably a couple of years back now. I was in a position where I was self-doubting myself, and I was like, "Is it really worth it? Just doing so much hustling." Um, did you ever experience this, something like this, like self-doubt or something in your career journey as well?
Uh, all the time, it happens to me all the time that I'm doubting myself and my ability to lead properly. And it's over time you become a little less sensitive to others, like comments and things like that. So you become
Correct.
more independent from that standpoint. But we're human beings, all of us. So I have the same moments of doubts as everybody else. I remember, for instance, when I moved to the US, that was 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I moved because I worked for a company. I was a deputy CEO of that company. It was a big global company, and we had made a big acquisition worldwide. And in the US, which was our largest market, the merger was not going very well. So the founder of the company asked me if I was willing to relocate to the US for a while and complete this integration and make things work. So I said, okay. After giving it some thought, with my wife, we moved to the US, relocated to the US. And then after that, the business was really very tough, right? The first years, like 2, 3 years, our largest clients started to really save costs and money, and it was not going very well. It was a large CPG multinational, very famous one. And at the time, they were not doing very well, so
Mm-hmm.
it affected our business. And I was making all these efforts without seeing any real growth, right? It was like flat, +1, +2%, very disappointing growth. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually questioned myself a lot and wondered if I was capable of doing my job, right? And then I remember that moment when I was taking the subway to go to the office. So I walked from my home to the subway, And it was something like in March, and sometimes in March, the weather starts to get a little warmer in New York, and it was one of those beautiful days, uh, very, very bright, very sunny. And I was looking around me and felt like, oh wow, this I'm lucky. I live in New York. This is a fantastic city, so energetic. I'm so lucky, and I'm not enjoying it. That's crazy. I need to enjoy myself way more, and enjoy the moment because it won't last forever. I might not be always enjoying living in New York, working in New York. So you gotta think differently and be more happy with yourself and happy with the situation. So I started to think that way, and I think it was good for the business. That year we had a great year. I'm not sure it's just because of that,
Hmm.
but it helped me. And now every time I have those moments where I feel, I'm not happy with something. Right now, PMI activity is fantastic. It's growing. We're doing very well, but there's always something that is not going well, right? Somewhere. And when I get like a little upset with that and wonder why I can't fix it, then I remember that moment when I was walking in the street, felt the joy of being in New York, and thought, okay, in the end, if you're miserable, you're going to make your team miserable, and then the whole business is going to be miserable, right? So you got to change your mindset and go back to joy, happiness, positive thinking.
Eh, I think, Pierre, it's all about, to sum it up, I think it's all about the positive mindset. If you are thinking on the right channel, right path, and most importantly, I think, Pierre, it's more about the intentions. If your intentions are right, and you have the right support of people around, then I think things will fall in place on its own.
Yeah,
Simple.
sometimes not as fast as you want, maybe
Correct.
not as big as you want, but in the end, I sometimes think about, look, in 10 years from now, will I remember that specific problem that I'm upset with today or not? And usually 99% of the time, the answer is obviously no.
No.
So don't worry too much about it. Worry about the important things.
Right. And this reminded me of one of the incident, Pierre. One of my student was, quite demotivated. He was studying for the PMP exam, and he lost his job in the path, and it was really challenging, when you don't have a job, and I could literally see, the person is not in the right mode. So I said this thing to that person, was that, hey, I know the sun goes down, right? Sun sets down every day, but the sun will come, definitely rise up the next day also. You just need to wait for that next day. It could be after 2 days or after 5 days, but it will come for sure. You just need to have a positive mindset. So I think that's probably on the similar
It's
lines.
true. It's the same idea. Yes.
Great, amazing. So, Pierre, I've been hearing all about the good stuff, and that's the right thought process also, because I wanted that who will watch this video, this series, they should feel motivated. But let me ask you this question: if you would have to give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it could be? What you could have done differently based on how you are at this stage?
It's like I'm really not a person who regrets anything or looks back and wish I would have done things differently. Of course, if I knew everything I know now, I'd go back in time and I'd make a fortune.
Right.
That would be easy, you know. But the advice I would give to any um, young person is the advice that my own grandpa gave me. And he was saying in French, that was my French grandpa, but it was something that is equivalent to inspiration is 90% perspiration, the idea that in the end, if you want to be successful, you got to work hard. And and I can't, I can't tell young people anything else. Like I know there is this idea that it's important to have a great work-life balance and you need to be able to accomplish yourself in many ways. And I don't disagree with that. I actually agree with it. But remember, successful people work very hard. Even talented people, they're talented maybe a little bit, but they've put a lot of effort. They've done things again and again and again and again and again until they get it right. Work matters.
Work matters. That's absolutely correct, Pierre. I think um, I am getting those goosebumps if you ask me when I hear it, and I can relate it to myself. that in the end it's worth it, Varun. Keep hustling, keep doing the right things. When your intentions are right, things would be right. And I think to all the younger generation, and these days, this is what I have been doing, motivating people towards the CAPM exam, because that's where we are targeting the fresh graduates. And the whole goal is, if we can target people in that space, if we can give them the direction about for project management, then I love what I do. I mean, I love project management. I'm pretty sure so many people out there would love that as well. Thank you so much, Pierre, for taking out this time. It's really an honor, as I said, and I'm sure after watching this video, a lot of people would get motivated and know a little bit more about you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Varun. It's a pleasure. And you have a lot of energy. Our ATPs are super important to me and to us. Like we're really trying at PMI to create not just a great organization, but a great ecosystem where each of you can live your life on your own terms, find your own way to leverage PMI, either the courses we have or the volunteering opportunity or become an ATP like you, Varun. It doesn't matter. But in the end, this is what we want to accomplish, create a great big community of professionals who love project management, who love each other, who love supporting each other.
Correct.
And I think this is what makes us all tick and happy.
Absolutely. In the end, it's all about community, and it's part of the project management community. Thank you so much, Pierre. Have a good day.
Thank you, Varun.